Okay. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Doing fine, thank you. Thank you for coming on the
Good, good.
show. Nice to have
Thanks
you
for having
here.
me.
I got to ask, is that a dog bed right
It's a
behind you?
cat bed, yeah.
A cat bed. Okay. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure what that was. I was looking at it, I was like, is there a baby in there? Or, yeah. Okay, cat bed. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I know you're here to promote a book or a couple of books, actually. I see two on here, capitally matched and capitally engaged. I'm assuming those are a series, right?
They are, yeah, they're a series of interconnected standalones, as we call them in the romance biz.
Interconnected standalone. What does that mean?
So basically what it means is that each book is going to contain a arc that ends in a happily ever after for one couple, but they're a shared world. So in this series, it follows five brothers. So it's each brother getting their happily ever after.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And are these young adult or are they adult or?
They are adult.
Okay. Did you write children's books before?
I did not know.
Okay. What am I looking at here? How many books do you have published?
I have two published, and then Caply Engage will be my third at the end of August.
Okay. So are you writing strictly in the romance genre?
I am, yes.
Okay. Before we kind of dive into the book, why don't you give us a little bit of your backstory? Tell us what you've been doing
Yeah,
with your life and
absolutely. So I grew up as a voracious reader, always was at the bookstore and at the local library. But then I went to college and graduate school and actually started a career in higher education administration. So was working at a small graduate institution. And during the pandemic, I really dove headfirst into the romance genre because there was a lot of time to spend doing solitary activities like reading. And while watching a Hallmark movie, Long Distance, with one of my best friends, a story idea for a Christmas romance novel came to me. And I thought, hey, why not? Let's try this. And I tried writing it and sort of pivoted my career. And so now I'm working part time. In a book related field, I'm writing and I am getting an MFA in writing popular fiction. So, kind of have pivoted, taken a hard left pivot, and am here in this bookish world.
oh, that's great. So, are you able to support yourself with your writing?
I am not, no. So I am married, and my husband has a more traditional 9 to 5 job. So he keeps us in health insurance. And then I do have a part time job that helps with that a little bit. So kind of cobbling things together there.
Well, I always ask that because there are so many authors out there who are struggling and a few who have made it big time.
I mean, I would love to be able to support myself. I don't need to, necessarily make oodles of money, but I would love for it to be a full time gig. But if it never happens, I found a good part time job that understands the bookish career, and so it's nice to kind of have a creative outlet and share these stories, but also, have other avenues as well.
So, tell me a little about the titles because you've got capital E, and that could mean a couple of different things. How do you mean it?
Yeah, so it's kind of a play, so play on words, and that is because they all take place in Washington D.C., which is where I've lived for the past 13 years, and so the capital E means it's an adjective that means excellently, but I kind of wanted to make a play on the fact that they took place in Washington D.C. in the nation's capital. So.
Oh, wouldn't that be spelled different though?
So the Capitol building is with an O, but the capital of the country is with an A.
Okay, so give us a synopsis of this. You said it is a series, so kind of give us a synopsis of the whole series.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's five brothers who are all going to end up in DC through one way or another and kind of finding their happily ever after. So they're close knit brothers. They're separated by about 7 or 8 years total between the oldest and the youngest. And so they're just sort of each kind of finding their way in the world. Some are taking on new careers, some are trying to find their place, find their fit. Some are taking that next step in their career and just kind of finding a partner to support them in those endeavors.
Is there any particular reason why they're in Washington? Are they all politicians?
They're not all politicians. It's just, as I mentioned, Washington, D.C. is where I've lived for the past 12, 13 years. And I feel like actually, it was actually my dad's recommendation. I was talking about where I wanted to set this next series, and my dad said, "Well, why wouldn't you set it in DC? It's where you live. It's what you know." And so it's a lot easier to write about a place that you've been and that you know, so that way you're not like, I mean, I'm still have to look up things on Google Maps, but you're not like scrolling and saying like, okay, like what neighborhood in New York City, would make sense for this thing, one thing or another. So they're not all politicians. The second book, the brother is a speechwriter for a senator, and so that's kind of set against a political background. And he has aspirations of running for office himself, but it's not a political book. It's just set against a political background. But that's the only like direct political ties that the series has.
Okay. Are all these brothers from that area?
They are not, no. So they grew up in New England, and sort of it's sort of ambivalent, but probably Massachusetts is kind of where I've tied them to. But then it's kind of a shared world with my debut novel, which was that Christmas romance novel. And they moved to the same town where the Christmas festival took place, that's sort of nebulous New England, and moved there after their dad remarried when they were all grown. So they've all kind of made it to the city for one reason or another.
Well, I guess that was my question is why would they all want to go to Washington individually, right? Not together.
Right. So it's kind of so there's something in romance that we call romance reasons, and so that's a little bit of it. But one brother moved there to start. That's where his business. He has an office there for his business that he started. It's like a financial firm. Another one's related in politics. Another one is going to come here because of a reason that is tied in the plot of his book. And so another one came to work for his older brother. So they have ties. It's just, but also a little bit of romance reasons. So because, they end up in the same city.
Okay, so there's no particular significance to that. It's just they all sort of happen to
Yeah.
all come to Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now do they all get together or are they not all there at the same time?
I haven't had all five in the city at the same time. I have had four of them together in the first book and then in the second book. In the first book, they all come together for Thanksgiving. The second one, there are three of them living in the city at that point in time, and a fourth comes to visit. And they go to brunch. So I eventually will get all five of them in the same room at the same time. It's just going to kind of take some weaving to make that happen.
Is it strict romance or is there more plot twist? Is there any murders or anything like that in there?
It's a contemporary romance rom-com. I mean, there are some serious issues. We talk about grief. There's some sort of dealing with parental disappointment in the first book. The brother's mother did die when they were, ages 11 to like 4. So there's some lasting impacts of that. But for the most part, it's a pretty just straight romance.
My understanding of the definition of a romance is it the happily ever after, like you said.
Had that central love story. That's the focus of the plot of whoever the characters are falling in love and ending in a happily ever after or a happily for now.
Okay, are you
Yeah.
self-published or do you have a publisher?
I am self-published, yes.
How are you finding the self-publishing world?
There are pros and cons to all publishing routes. I really enjoy the fact that I control my publishing schedule, that I, have the final say on the storyline and where things go, what I'm writing. But it is, it's a lot to do on your own. You're marketing, you're putting out all the money for the editing and the cover design, formatting. I mean, some people have the skills to do some of that themselves. So the buck starts with you, which is great, but it also ends with you. So it's a roller coaster, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to kind of have the control now and start my career this way.
I'm curious about one thing, if you don't mind. What does it cost to hire somebody to do your editing?
It depends on the editor it depends on who you hire. If they're charging rates that they're worth it, if they're charging rates that compensate them fairly for the skills and the expertise that they have hopefully put into that trading. It depends on the word count, but I believe it can cost over $1,000 for 2 rounds of editing.
For a book that is
So that book was about 65,000 words.
65,000 words.
So
Okay.
yeah, and I do a package with my editor where I do 2 rounds of edits, and then she works with a proofreader as well. So I guess it actually goes through 3 different rounds. So
$1,000 for a novel would be a fair price.
I think so, yes. I mean, there are some people who are just starting out who are, maybe charge 1 cent a word or half a cent of words. But the editor that I'm working with is going by, there's a independent editors association, and so she's charging within the range that they say the editors should be charging, the freelance editors should be charging. So
you said there were 5 brothers. So am I correct to assume there are going to be 5 books in this series at least?
You are correct to assume that, yes.
Okay. Yep. All right. So we got 3 more to go. How long are you anticipating to get all of those out?
I'm hoping to do one every 6 months. So I think I've kind of my goal is to be done by the summer of 2026.
You said you had another book that was out. Is that also a romance?
It is a romance, yeah. It's a Christmas romance.
Okay, but it's not related to this one.
So the get out your mind map here. So the heroine's best friend from my Christmas romance novel is the heroine in the first Brothers novel. So they're in a shared world. You don't have to read them, but they are connected.
How would you rate your books in terms of like movie ratings? G, PG, R?
So if you're going off of movie ratings, they probably would be R. They do have open door, explicit, steamy scenes. So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Is there? See, I don't read romance novels.
Sure.
So I don't really know. But I mean, do they have? I know you can get books that are very erotic, and ones that are not. So that's why I just use the movie rating as a reference. But do they put on the books like any sort of explicit warnings like they do on CDs? And I mean, they do that for about everything these days.
Right. So there's no requirement of that necessarily. I do know that I personally write exactly what I said, that this book contains open door, explicit, steamy scenes, because there are some people who don't want to read any of that. And also there's an argument that having an illustrated cartoon cover, like my books are, can sometimes lend to the idea that there aren't any of those explicit, steamy scenes. So it's kind of a both and. I'm telling readers who are looking for those that they are there, and I'm telling readers who aren't looking for those that my book may not be a good match for them. But it's really interesting. This is a debate that happens a lot in the romance community, that different people's, we call them steam levels, are what may be very steamy for one person may not be extremely steamy for someone else. So there's no like sort of general guide that has said if you have this many scenes and these words are used, you must call it an R rated. There's nothing like that.
Have these books been released? Are both of them out?
So my Christmas novel is out, Happily Matched is out, and then Happily Engaged will be out on August 29th.
Well, with that, we got to kind of wind this down. We are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on. And the last question is, do you have a website that you want to give out?
I sure do. You can find me at rachelwholm.com.
And there's information about your books on your website?
Yep. Information about my books on my website. They are available on ebooks on Kindle Unlimited, and you can get a paperback anywhere, almost anywhere you can buy an online, anywhere that they sell online paperback books.
Okay, super. Well, again, thank you for coming on. It was nice meeting you and chatting with you. Best of luck with the books.
Yes.
Hope they do well.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.